Hello, and wherever you are in the world, welcome.
Welcome everybody to this day 2 of the IOSH Railway Group virtual conference, and it's good to see so many of you joining us online today. I'm David Porter, a member of the Railway Group Committee, and I'll be chairing this session today. The whole of this week we're looking at Mind the Gap. That's the gap between our hopes and intentions for the health and safety of the railway industry compared to where we are in reality at the moment. And in the chat box you will see a link to some of the other webinars which are part of this new virtual conference. Our sub-theme today is Understanding and Actioning Risk. And in our first session this morning, we'll be looking at workforce risk. We have with us today Nick Millington, who is the Director of the Network Rail Safety Task Force, who is going to outline what's been going on at Network Rail about improving the safety of working on the line. Nick is a chartered civil engineer with nearly 30 years of rail industry experience, leading multidisciplinary engineering, operations and project management teams involved in change programs, innovation and legacy business improvement. In October 2019, he was appointed the Network Rail Director of the Safety Task Force, and he was previously the Head of Maintenance Delivery. Nick is going to talk about reducing the risk of track workers being struck by trains. And of course, this is a timely topic as last week RAIB published their report of their investigation into the fatalities at Margam. So over to you, Nick.
Thanks ever so much. I'll just share my screen a second. Bear with me. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now, and somebody will shout to me if they can't. So thanks ever so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. And as David said, I've given you an update on where we are with the Safety Task Force, and in particular what we're doing with regard to reducing the risk of track workers being struck by a train. So tragically, in July last year, Gareth and Spike were struck and killed by a GWR service in South Wales. And I guess it put another profound shock through the rail industry that these things happen and can be allowed to happen in this current, in this day and age, as it were. And since the sad events of Margam last year, we've also had Aidan, who was sadly struck and killed in April at Northampton. It just brings it ever so close that we've got an awful lot still that we can and must do to plan and execute work on our railway in the safest possible way. And there are things that we are doing, and there are more things that we can do and also should do. So after the sad events at Margam, we were served as a company with 2 improvement notices, safety improvement notices from our rail regulator. And there was one regarding planning and the way that we plan work, and there was another one that was served as a pair that related to technology and the deployment of technology to further assist the risk reduction to track workers. We had a collaborative discussion across all of our Network Rail routes, and we've agreed with the regulator and all of our routes 12 specific compliance criteria. And with regard to a compliance date, we agreed that a sensible time frame with rationale given for that would be the 31st of July 2022. So with the 12 compliance criteria agreed, the next challenge I had was about how on earth do you start with this? There's an awful lot of information in the rail industry, and it was really important that we made the right steps in the right order, and we're very, very mindful of not pushing the risk elsewhere. So through the summer and autumn of last year, and we continue to do this as well, an awful lot of analysis on accident and incident data and all sorts of other information that we can, some of it that we've created new information sources, and therefore we are measuring new and different risks, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But this graph shows you the kind of dilemma I was faced with. you can see up until the fifth block along. The fifth block along in this histogram was when Margam happened, and you can see that in orange they were the lookout related near misses that happened on our railway, and you could see that we were having in a typical period somewhere between 4 and typically 6 near misses. But obviously in period 5 that spiked. But the point I draw your attention to is the yellow, is that we had a number of investigations that were either ongoing or not complete for whatever reason, and it made it very difficult to understand what are our risks, where are our risks, what are the effective means to mitigate those risks without transferring the risk. So we've done a lot of work on reducing the outstanding investigations, and also, and I'll show you obviously in a minute, what we've done to more accurately map and understand the trends and the risks, and then that'll explain some of the actions that we've taken in the last year to reduce risk. So another thing, controversially, prior to Christmas last year, with the analysis that we were undertaking, was we introduced something called a potential fatality dashboard. Now, I make no apology for the name. We were putting people at risk day in, day out. We had work teams of numerous people jumping out the way of trains, and those people have got families, and I needed to bring this point very clearly to the attention of a number of senior people in Network Rail in terms of the detail. I mean, they were aware of the events at Margam, of course they were, but I needed to bring this much more vividly to life. And what this slide shows you, two things: operational close calls, many of which are a precedent to a near miss happening or worse, and then the near misses themselves. And what we did was we plotted the number of people involved in those work groups, but we also plotted the times of the day and the days of the week and the locations where these events were happening, to see what information it could give us to more accurately put in place antidotes. And what you can see, a few things. One is that we are reducing operational close calls quite nicely, which is good, but there's a lot more to do. And near misses, which is the bottom line of the top graphs, was pretty static. In the bottom graphs, what you can see there is that we were having a disproportionately large amount of near misses on midweek days, between 8 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. And also, so on Tuesdays, generally Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays were heightened risks. But also you can see that we were having a lot of operational close calls with putting out protection systems in the either very late into the evening or very early hours of the morning. So we were able then to start to unpick, why is this happening? So now I've got all sorts of data at my fingertips that I didn't have last year, so I can paint a really accurate picture and use this quite persuasively to change industry-held beliefs and habits on all sorts of things: planning, modernisation, etc., etc. So we've now got causation data for all of the near misses, which are, and a lot of the close calls we've also mapped as well. But this is a near miss graph, and you can see, so for instance, unassisted lookout working remains, even though we've made some significant reductions in risk, it still remains our primary focus area to reduce the risk of near misses and decrease the risk to track workers. To put it bluntly, working on open lines in this day and age needs to stop. And you can see that obviously there's a speed relationship with unassisted lookout working in the middle as well. So, above 60 miles an hour, you can see the level of events that we're seeing. And these are the ones that we know about. Of course, there may be others that we don't know about. But we've plotted the data by location, by work type, by speed, by causation, and all sorts of other things, so we can see very clearly what is going on. So we put together a program of activities based on the back of the negotiations with our safety regulator for the 2 notices that I referred to at the start. So basically, a comprehensive review of all maintenance planning. There are 28 million maintenance tasks, and basically what we are looking to do is take those 28 million tasks, batch them more effectively, move them into line blockages, move them into T3 possessions, implement technology so that we don't need to do certain tasks anymore, and make sure that we basically plan much more accurately and systematically move and link tasks to safer levels of protection or line blockage. We don't want to shift risk into our signal boxes, so we've had to undertake a very detailed exercise on our 700 signal workstations to make sure that we don't transfer what was track worker risk into signaller workload risk. So we've put in place an extensive set of assessments for the signaller workstations and put in place some other actions that will enable line blockages to be taken much more safely, and also to regulate the planning and the flow of line blockages. A lot more information with regard to line blockage. So we are now receiving each period comprehensive data on where we put additional protection for line blockages and the length of line blockages and all sorts of things, so that we can make sure that where there are underutilized line blockages, maintenance teams can be led to use them. But more importantly, we can then plan to put the additional protection, which is generally technology, around those line blockages. There is a kind of generalism, but it's founded in fact that on occasions with signal workload risk, that trains have been put into planned line blockages, and obviously we need to take that very seriously, because the move away from unassisted lookout working, or red zone working as it's known, into safer access, there was an impedance to doing that, and that was because there was a fear factor with line blockages, so we had to deal with that fear factor very robustly as well. We've also a piece of work where we're modernising our planning systems and providing much better assurance for our leaders and our managers. And then finally, we are deploying technology to make to take out the human error from working on the railway. So that's devices and equipment to protect line blockages, but also some treadle activated warning systems that take the human element out of providing robust warnings. So basically, in that last slide, I took you through a whistle-stop tour of what we're doing. There's a lot more detail than that, and we've captured everything that we're doing in a specification document called Delivering Safe and Effective Railway Maintenance. It's a 43-page document. It's currently on its 3rd version, and we keep iterating it as we learn more or discover that we've got more things to do, or change what we originally conceived based on the analysis and the data that we've got. So this document, like I said, 3rd issue, 1 year in. All of the 13 routes have signed up to it, including the stakeholders in the route, so heads of planning, heads of operations, etc. And we've got a very comprehensive breakdown structure of work activities that are described in this document. And I'll take you on in a minute to show how we're delivering those work activities. We've set up program teams in every single route. We have detailed peer reviews of those 13 route teams every 3 months. But also we have a running monthly pulse check as well. And we also undertake a maturity assessment of where each route and region is, so that we can map where additional support is required, but also where we've got good practice that we can share with others. This is a plot from last January, where we've done a kind of maturity assessment on each route's programme with regard to its completion of the assurance directive. And we've used, this has been quite there's subjectivity to this, but it's quite an effective visual means of influencing where teams have either got to recruit or focus more on technology or planning, or the various parts that make up the work that we are doing to reduce track worker safety risk. We've got about 187 people working on the notices and the risk reduction work nationwide. And we focused on those teams being made up of seasoned professionals with railway maintenance and projects. But more importantly, we've got over 30% of those team members that have come directly from the front line. This programme will only work if it's got the hearts and minds of the front line. So it's really important that we've got those that deliver maintenance day in, day out on site, working with us to make sure that the steps that we take are the right steps and are taken the right way. So to summarise what it is that we are focusing on, and these are kind of not necessarily copying what Boris did with the pandemic, but there are three things that if people focus on these three things, it will drive us the right way when it comes to reducing track worker safety risks. So eliminating open line working with lookouts, and then providing technology where we are working on the line. So so basically 100% additional protection, and then also 100% compliance with standard 019. So basically making sure that we plan in the most safest way with regard to the hierarchy of risk controls, but then additional assurance to make sure that we continue to improve in that area. So first thing we were focusing on was the elimination of lookout working. At the point of Margam, 1 million work orders per annum were delivered with a lookout flag, and it was the most common cause of near miss, with over 50% of near misses still involving lookout working. You can see the slide here. It originates from Victorian times and slightly after, and now we've got very high-speed trains, and the frequency of trains immediately prior to COVID obviously was very busy. And what we've done is basically focused on every route in every region to eliminate unassisted lookout working. And in the space of a year, I'm pleased to say that we've reduced unassisted lookout working by over 50% across the country. It's a strongly held tradition. It's a habit. It's preferred by many frontline staff. But when you look at the data, it's the most dangerous way to access our railway. And what we've done is put in place a lot more control and assurance around permitting unassisted lookout working, and we have remapped those types of work, or the work to be done under that type of protection and warning, to much safer systems of work. And you can see the little map of the UK there in the background, where in the space of 12 months, there are some routes that have virtually eliminated lookout working altogether, and there are all routes, I'm pleased to say, are well on the way to reducing and eliminating lookout working. In fact, they've all given dates where they're going to eliminate it altogether, which is very, very, very positive. This graph shows you two things. It shows you the blue line, which is the reduction in unassisted lookout working over 12 months. But when you change any kind of big system, you've got to be very careful that there's not an equal and opposite reaction that's unfavourable. And the red line is outstanding or overdue work. And we kept a very close eye on overdue work, and then also where compliance with regard to asset inspections and maintenance was put at risk. And we've tracked this very closely. And you can see with the blue line that since the start of 2019, but through the events of Margam, which occurred roughly about week 13 to 15 in that area, you can see the blue line has got a very nice trend now, trending down. And where we once were doing over 20,000 work orders a week with lookout flags, we're now doing less than 10,000 a week, and we're tracking. And we in those routes that were showing red on the previous graph, there are further controls being implemented by the day currently. And what's also pleasing to see is you can see with the red graph, I mean, the overdue work ebbs and it flows. Doesn't mean to say it's a problem, but you've got to keep an eye on it. So basically you could see through up until Christmas of last year, and you do get this during the autumn traditionally, and certainly over Christmas you get it, you get overdue work orders start to climb, and providing their compliance is kept in check, that's not an issue. You can catch it up. And you can see that what's happened through since week 39, that initial rescheduling of work out of the more so out of lookout working into line blockages and protection or possessions, you can see that after Christmas, the 13-week lag for the rephasing of work then started to kick in. And what we've seen throughout this year, in spite of COVID as well, is we've seen a good trend in reduction of overdue work, and it remains under control. Another piece of information that we've generated, the regulator was really concerned about our ability to protect line blockages, and our track worker teams had cited numerous instances where line blockages, the protection arrangements had failed because of signal workload risk or signal error. And it's a very serious occurrence when a train's routed into a line blockage. And this time last year, we had very little data on what was happening with how many line blockages are planned, how many are taken, and how many have got additional protection. and therefore protecting those arrangements, it was very difficult to forecast what we needed to do. And basically what we've done is, across the 700 signal workstations, we've put in place a data capture system, and we now have routinely over 80%, 85% of all line blockages. We get very deep data, and we can see a lot of a lot of the detail behind the planning habits and how we protected and the times of the day and all those sorts of things, but also which ones have got additional protection currently, and therefore where do we need to focus our efforts. And that took quite a while to get to a high level of detail, but we've got about 6 periods now, so 6 months worth of data, which is really rich, and it's informing what we need to do next with regard to managing signal workload and our technology deployments to protect line blockages. And then in doing that, it gives confidence for our track worker teams and those that plan that work to move work into line blockages from lookout working. Another thing that we've done as well is we've undertaken a detailed assessment of signal workload, and when you combine that with the line blockage returns, you can see where the highest risk, and this is pretty obvious, but we couldn't put numeracy to it. The highest risk times in a signal box are midweek mornings. We can now statistically prove it, and basically what we've done with the 700 work assessments and the line blockage returns is plotted the risk. And you can see in the heat map on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that between 8 o'clock and just after midday is a high-risk time on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. When you work that back to the number of near misses and operational close calls you're having, there's a direct correlation that we basically have a very busy railway on midweek mornings, very busy signallers, and we roster people and schedule work on midweek mornings. And therefore you've got what you could argue is a perfect storm. So it's really important that we use this risk data, work with planning teams and rostering teams to look at when are the less risky times to plan work on the railway, and then choose to work in those times where you can get a line blockage or you can get a possession, and then you can additionally protect those arrangements and bring down the level of near miss and operational close call that occurs on midweek mornings due to unassisted lookout working or line blockage error. Also, the table on the left hand side can show you we take in the region of 20 to 25,000 line blockages every 4 weeks, and we are now measuring the increase in additional protection. So you can see that period 4, 5 and 6 there, an increase up to 23, or just over 23%. We started at the start of the year with 5% additional protection for line blockages and peak mornings, and with this tangible fact-based data, we're able to use it to influence changes in work practices, deployment of technology, and rescheduling of work at safer times. This device is a track circuit operating device, remote controlled, and this is one of the things that we use to protect line blockages. They're quick to deploy, very fast. We've invested in quite a lot of these. We've got 500 in the ground so far, another 700 to go in by the end of the year. And these enable the track worker teams to secure their line blockage, so it doesn't it's not solely dependent on the signaller providing them with protection. And we will be investing further in these. These are not the only form of additional protection, but they're one that feature currently quite heavily. We're also modernising our work tasks, so we're reviewing the 28 million maintenance tasks that I referred to, and it's fair to say that we are using a lot of technology to modernise rail inspections, patrolling, risk-based maintenance. We're now using drones to do certain inspections, and there are all sorts of other more modern ways that we are looking, or that we are deploying, and we're using that to implement risk-based maintenance techniques. And 2 things for that. One is it reduces the need for human beings to go on the railway, and secondly, once we flip assets and infrastructure to a risk-based maintenance regime, you've got to be much more proactive in maintaining it, which means you have to plan an intervention rather than react to a failure. And we are tracking and driving the migration to risk-based maintenance. because the planned intervention in possessions or line blockages is much safer than reacting with a flag when trains are on stop. So we continue to focus on work modernisation. Importantly, and I said that 30% of our team nationally are from our frontline depots. We are engaging heavily every day, every week, out in mess rooms, in depots, on site. And this is really important to win the hearts and minds of our frontline teams. This it cannot be seen to be an autonomous programme doing something to a section that may or may not make their working lives more awkward. This has got to be teams understanding the risks that they face in the work that they do, and then working with us to provide the right plan and the right technology to keep them safe. And in engaging them fully, they will then protect and own that plan and evolve it further. So one of those comments I just made about making their lives more awkward, there's a generally held belief that all we're doing is shifting work onto nights. And this is a roster plot that shows on one particular route where we've significantly or virtually eliminated lookout working. What we're able to demonstrate is that in actual fact, over a period of 26 weeks, we've only moved 1.6% more work hours into nights. We've shifted a lot more tasks into nights, which means that the existing teams that were on nights previously have got a more efficiently planned work bank. But what we're not doing is rostering more people wholesale onto nights, and that's I guess a degree of comfort for many that we are also keeping a very keen eye on fatigue risk as well. So we're improving our planning system. You'll see, if those of you who've read the Margam report, that the existing safe system of work planning system is life expired. It is. I'm pleased to say that we're investing a sizable sum of money to buy a new safe system of work planning system, which should be rolled out from next April. It's industry leading. It's based on known technology that's used by our private sector contractors. We've evolved it slightly, but we are aware, or we were very keen to implement something that is known and that we know that works, that is not a brand new technology, and that will come on stream from April. And what we've also done with using various software like Power BI is give managers much more management and assurance information at their fingertips, so that they can put in place a heightened assurance regime for site inspections and risk areas. In a nutshell, the work that we've got to do and the work that we are focused on so far, that we do 4.3 million work orders every year. Well, over 1 million of them were done with a lookout flag at the time of Margam. And basically we've got to eliminate those, and we've got to shift those into line blockages or T3 possessions. So you can see the red balls, and we've had to focus on data accuracy from our ellipse system, which we've done, I'm pleased to say. So basically we've got a million work orders a year to move into safer protection or warning arrangements. And you can see basically what we're looking to do is the million plus red work orders that are in the red circles, we're moving them into line blockages. We're providing additional protection to those line blockages, and we're also negotiating now for the latter parts of 2021 for additional possession access to make sure that we've got enough time to maintain our railway without having to resort to the flag. So where are we now? The task force is funded to £269 million. It's a major replanning exercise for railway maintenance. It's a major technology deployment exercise. It's got 13 programmes across every route. It's got nearly 5,500 milestones, and we closely track every intervention, and we've got a very detailed information repository where we're storing evidence of progress. And I'm pleased to say that in spite of COVID, we've managed to stay on plan so far, although there were some concerns before COVID, but we've managed to overcome them. And we are currently just marginally ahead of our intended milestone plan dates at 100, just over 100%. And what we are observing is a very systematic review of maintenance, a very considered assessment of signal workload risk, modernisation of maintenance tasks, reduction in lookout working, which was the intention from the start. This slide is quite a busy slide, but a couple of things I'll pick out because I want to get to questions in the next 5 or so minutes. The important thing is the graph in the middle at the bottom. So you can see that basically in the space of 12 months, what we've done is brought down the number of near-miss events, and we have improved near-miss frequency. So at the time of Margam, the moving annual average for near-miss events was 69, and we are now at period 8 at 38 events per annum. So that's a fairly sizable reduction, but we're normalising that reduction with hours worked on track as well, so that we're not just because the work that we do ebbs and flows, certainly with project work, and what we're able to prove is that just over a year ago we had a near miss frequency of under 1 million hours between events, and now we're at nearly 1.4 million hours between near misses. And what we're able to do with that data as well is focus on particular business areas that have got a high frequency rate of operational close calls and near misses, and put in very specialist support to help them improve. So we have a regional structure and a route structure, 5 regions, 13 routes. This table gives you kind of a snapshot of where each one is. Each is improving, that's fair to say. I'm very cautious in measuring our approach. I don't want to over-promise and under-deliver. So basically, you can see that the frequency between near-miss events, we're able to track the improvement across every region, and in routes. We've got some very detailed KPIs, leading and lagging, that we put in place. Unassisted lookout working has reduced, like I said, by 50%, and there are now firm dates for each route and region to eliminate lookout working, and that's where we currently stand. We're about just over a year into the safety task force. We've got about another 2 years to do, and I'm marginally pleased about our progress, but I'm also cautious because there's so much more that we must do. So this is a summary of the first year's progress. A lot of numbers, I'm not going to go to them all, but you can see basically where we've come from in September 2019 to where we are now in the autumn of 2020. And basically, to summarise, like I said, we're a £269 million programme. It's a safety risk reduction programme, but there are also operational benefits to, with reliability, maintenance efficiency, and all other elements of railway operations are touched by our programme. So whilst it is a risk reduction programme, we are tracking other benefits and other improvements that expand beyond just the safety sphere. This is the line I'm particularly proud of, the near miss reduction. So it's really nice to see that a stubborn measure that has stayed in the 60s for a number of months and years is now tracking and reducing every period. So what's next? So the next 6 months in Nick's mind are Donald Rumsfeld months. We've got to eliminate unknown unknowns, and there are a few of those still. I've got people that are above me in the industry saying, Nick, when will you know that you've got this in the bag? And I've said, I don't know yet, because there are things that are very complicated that we don't understand fully yet. And we've got to get to the bottom of the data and then put in place the right interventions to make sure that I can give you a degree of certainty that you want. So I'm optimistic that over the next 6 months we'll do that. So basically, possession negotiations for next year, the deployment plans for additional protection in line blockages. We're also registering our line side assets, so cess walkways in ellipse, so that we know that we've got safe areas to walk from access points to assets. We are continuing with the work bank review, the 28 million tasks. We're about 30% of the way through that at the moment, and we've got a lot of work planned over the winter and into next spring to really flush through the opportunities that provides. We're closely monitoring roster alignment and making sure that we roster teams at the most effective and safe times. I've mentioned about signal and workload risk, and we've done the 700 signal and workload assessments. We now embark on a period of 3 months of intense workshops with each signal workstation to make sure that we plan, that we put in place effective line blockage registers. And from April onwards next year, that will be an online portal-based line blockage planning system. So there's a lot to do in that space. I've mentioned about frontline engagement. That will never stop. We will only be doing more of that. And also what we're looking to do is leave a legacy, which is a business plan for CP7 that ensures that the hard work that's being put in across the whole of the company at the moment doesn't revert back to old practices due to financial perceptions and constraints. Last week, if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, last week we had the Margam report issued from the Rail Accident Investigation Branch, a very profound report. I've read it twice myself since it was issued. And whilst compliance to the notices is one thing, it's not the whole thing. We must comply with the notices, but we also must keep or do everything in our gift to keep track workers safe. And there's, in reading the report again, it's not lost on me that there are many elements more than just the replanning and the deployment of technology that we must tackle if we're to truly improve the safe outcomes for our track workers. And this is my final slide really. So the Rail Accident Investigation Branch, I've been in dialogue with them for obviously since Margam, but they've done an excellent piece of work with Loughborough University. I myself have read numerous academic reports and also accident investigation reports, and it's my honest belief that we need to simplify the standard that we use to put track workers to work without losing its good intent. We need to simplify the roles and the capabilities and competencies of those that carry out work on or near the line, and put in place a much more progressive human factors and non-technical skills support program for the 28,000 controllers of site safety or persons in charge that will go forward and maintain and deliver the railway of the future. So on the 13th of October, I put a paper to our executive in Network Rail to seek support for a wide-ranging non-technical skills program. I'm pleased to say that was approved. We're now in a period of defining what that may comprise and putting in place scenarios for transition. And shortly after Christmas, I'm optimistic that I'll be able to come out to the industry with what that will look like. And that for me is the holy grail. The mechanics of replanning and technology are fairly easy to do and track. How every single person acts and behaves in a different circumstance, it will be the key to solving this problem once and for all. And that's the next step for us in the task force. So that's me done. I think I've got about 20 minutes or 15 minutes for questions. And I hope that was clear. Apologies about the Wi-Fi interruption in the middle, but hopefully I got around that okay.
Nick, thank you so much there. That was a very rich picture of the scale and complexities of what you're trying to achieve there. And I noted the very analytical and evidence-based approach that you're adopting, as well as this participative HF emphasis. There are a few questions, and I shall just work through them in the order that they've been received. And I'm also getting some good feedback people who are very, very pleased and impressed with what you've said, Nick. So thank you very much. First of all, a question from Alan. What's the time span for the introduction of Rail Hub, on-track and PIC competencies, and will this be rolled out for the supply chain?
So I'll deal with those one at a time. Yep. The Rail Hub on-track system is widely used by the supply chain now.
Okay.
And many of our principal contractors use it now. Some don't, but many do. And one of the reasons why we've selected it is because we've seen it in action with our supply chain and we know that it works. So for Network Rail, we will begin to test it in our depots from April of 2021. We've taken the existing Rail Hub system and we've put some modifications to it. So one thing that we will do is it will write to and from Sentinel. So the track staff that go on the track, you'll get a data feed from Sentinel when you swipe people in, so it auto-populates and you know that people have got the right competencies that are in date. The other thing that we're going to do as well is that system will only liven up a safe system of work pack when you can swipe in at the right access point. So we are uniquely coding each of our access points. So that's a slight modification on what the supply chain use now. And we're saying to our supply chain, we'll pay for that software upgrade. You can take advantage of it from the moment that we paid for the development. So that, I think, answers the question on RailHub. With regard to PIC competencies, it's quite a complex thing to do, in so much that there's an awful lot of, so there's 28,000 COSs currently, 14,000 in the supply chain and 14,000 in Network Rail. Our analysis leads us to a situation where we don't believe we need 28,000, we probably need under 20. So we're now detailing what that PIC competence will look like. And we're working with supply chain. So I've been talking to ISLG and others, and there'll be industry participation in what we're doing, but also importantly, our trades unions as well. And I'm looking to put a paper to our executive in December. And I'm not going to be held to a definite timescale because I'd rather do something right and fast. From the second quarter of next year on, we'll start a migration provisionally, and it is a migration. It's not a cut across. That's one of the learnings from previous. Approximately 2 to 2.5 years beyond June of next year, if we get this migration substantially complete, I think we'd have done well. One of the things that we are going to put in place, though, is an entry-level assessment, and that entry-level assessment will help us look at the ongoing CPD needs for those persons in charge, but it also might pop up scenarios where people don't actually need the competences, so they shouldn't do it, or indeed they haven't got the behavioural prerequisites to proceed with a certification, in which case they'll go for retraining, or indeed will withdraw the competence. So we want to make sure that only the right people go ahead for the right reasons.
Okay then, thank you, Nick. Another question from Terence. Is there going to be any reduction to the 12/14-hour rule to a 10 to 12-hour rule as standard to reduce worker fatigue?
So there's a fatigue improvement programme within Network Rail that that is aiming to address some of the challenges with fatigue. I know we've got problems in our signal boxes and on sites with regard to. Excuse me 1 second. That's the joys of working at home, by the way. My wife's locked herself out. Yeah, so fatigue. So we are looking to move to a place where those shift durations that you refer to there, and the 14-hour door-to-door times, are reduced and eliminated. It's quite a complex puzzle. So, for instance, in operational locations with signallers, you've got to train up the signallers. During COVID, the training's quite difficult to achieve in a socially distant way. But there is an intention via the fatigue management programme. I don't know if Julian Hendon's presented to this group historically on the progress of the fatigue reduction programme, but certainly as with the work that I'm doing, if you look at the migration of work to more fixed access windows, what we're able to also demonstrate is we're reducing the quantity of 12-hour rosters, and we are improving fatigue on the way. So we are focused on it in our programme.
Okay, thanks for that. Very useful. Now, another question here from Ed. Given the nature of the Margam accident and the historical situation which is revealed there, do you think that 3 years to comply with the notices is a bit excessive, or what?
No, I don't. I don't think it's excessive, and the reason, I'll give a good reason for that. So the key to sorting this problem out is not transferring risk, and I can't stress that. As you know, it is so important. At the time of Margam in July of 2019, through the conversations we had with the regulator through last summer, with industry, so the right thing to do is only do the work that you need to do, and do that in the safest possible access windows. So we've got 28 million tasks that we need to review and sensibly review it. The risk of not doing that is that we transfer what is track worker risk into asset risk, and a train accident is far more serious potentially than a work group incident. And the key thing is industry timescales for negotiating possession access. So at September of last year, we were already at version 0 of the 2021 access statement for possessions. So literally, as we agreed the 12 criteria, we were already past the deadline for negotiating access for 2021 next year. And I gave a rationale to our safety regulator that we will make early reductions in risk where we can make them. So you'll see that we made a very, very substantial reduction in lookout working because we could do that straight away. But in order to comply properly with the notices, we need to be able to work with our DFT colleagues, our train operator colleagues, our freight operator colleagues, and be able to negotiate relevant access and appropriate access, but with the right rationale, having done those work bank reviews, and that takes time. And that's the 3 years. We're not necessarily sat on our hands. You can see that we've made an awful lot of interventions in a number of places already, and we'll continue to work at this pace.
Thank you. Another question from Paul. How is NR going to assure itself that work on site is being delivered in accordance with the plan rather than something locally evolved as per Margam?
I guess if I reflect on my experience as a head of maintenance for a network rail route, there's no substitute for supervision and management. And I can't stress that enough. The new rail hub system will give us much more insight in terms of assurance with regard to how we plan, who plans, the effectiveness of transfer, the date that packs are accepted, and so it gives a lot more visibility. But that's not enough. But it's helpful. But what we will be able to do as well is the rail hub system and the way that we're designing it will have, so we'll be able to plan surveillance and assurance with regard to, and basically what we will need to do, and we are working through the detail of this now, is work with our trade union colleagues and the supervisory grades and the section manager grades and engineers to make sure that there is adequate supervision and visible felt leadership on site and checking. So something that we are informally doing, in fact I was doing it myself in the middle of last week, is randomly selected 5 say system of work packs and visited each of the 5 sites completely unannounced, and we've got we're visiting up to 10% additional sites currently to get a feel, but we're doing that under the current regime. We put in extra surveillance. The right thing to do is, once we've got the rail hub system, is make sure that we free up the possibly less higher priority tasks of supervisors and managers to get out there and do effective coaching, surveillance, and assure themselves that the right things are being done.
Thanks, Nick. A question from Glenn, a bit of a long one. Are there any work streams looking at project work where lookout working is mostly likely to be surveying, and how that work can be undertaken more safely without needing to move the surveys into the possessions that we are reliant on to complete the main works, e.g. some areas may only have 1 or 2 possessions per year? Is that okay, Nick?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So the primary risk at the time of Margam undoubtedly was maintenance. With the number of near misses occurring in maintenance, the amount of unassisted lookout, higher risk work that was being done, and in the first year we have focused, a very high proportion of our efforts on maintenance. And I feel like we're making sustained progress. We've got a good understanding. We've got a sense of direction. From June this year, I've started to talk to capital delivery directors. A number of contractors and suppliers have already declared that they won't work in open line scenarios. That's a very positive step. One thing I would say is that I mean, I used to do railway surveying myself, and do we do it in daylight because it's convenient? Are there technological means that we can use to do it? You know, for instance, we've got things like Ryler and other kind of aerial surveys that we can mobilise to eliminate the need to go on the track during the day when the railway's open. Certainly, when I managed high output track renewals a few years ago, I used to get a near miss related to surveying every 3 weeks. And for a process of modernising the way that we survey and visit sites, I'm going to touch wood, but we've reduced or eliminated that risk. And what I would say to those that are in the surveying community is there's a lot of technology out there. You need to bring it to us, and certainly in the tender stages and the pre-qualification stages, we Network Rail, we need to be very cute on what we ask for, because there are modern systems to get coordinate-based surveys, and there are ways of visiting sites that don't necessarily need to put human beings in the way of trains that are moving.
Thank you, Nick. A follow-up question from Ed. Nick, are you confident that the reductions in near-miss incidents in the past 6 months have not been unduly influenced by a reduction in rail activity as a result of COVID-19?
So the rail, so I've got nothing to say that it is caused by that. I mean, obviously, COVID has brought a kind of interesting conundrum to all of us. So what we saw in April and May was an emergency standards change on a number of the maintenance activities that we undertake, and what that has also done is triggered a faster implementation of risk-based maintenance techniques, so that we don't need to put human beings on the track. And if I look at the data with regard to hours worked on track using Lookout, and so there is nothing at this stage in all of the data and analysis that we've got to say that this is an artificially suppressed situation that will spring back.
Okay, thank you. Our last question now, given the time.
Good question, though.
Perhaps something to think about, Nick. Our last question from Paul. What progress has been made on altering the timetable to give maintenance teams white space to work with no trains running?
So at this point, I guess two things. The signal workload assessments and the more detailed understanding of where and when line blockages are being taken. What we're actually seeing is about 100% oversubscription for the available line blockages in the morning, but an undersubscription in the afternoon. So I don't think it's appropriate to go to our customers and say, stop running your trains in the morning because we want to be rostered in the morning. British Airways wouldn't do it with their pilots, for instance. But what we are doing is shining a light on where there is availability during the 24-hour and 7-day-a-week timetable, and we are producing that in registers that will become also simultaneously with the on-track system. We're producing a web-based line blockage planning portal. So what we are doing first, and before we go to our customers asking for specific requests on line blockage or white space between trains, is shining a much brighter light on where there's existing capacity now. And I think all customers to the rail industry would expect us to do that. And that heat map that I showed you pretty much is a national pictorial representation of that. We're in the dialogue with train operator customers about the 2022 access plan. And we have got over 300 lines of negotiation where on midweek possessions and certain specific weekend repeat possessions, we are negotiating a sensible implementation, but based on good fact-based rationale. The train operators want a well-maintained railway, and we're able to go to them and say, look, we've tried every other kind of possible technique we can to either reschedule, modernise, but the reality is we can't use a flag anymore, and therefore there's nowhere else to go. We've got to come to you, and we're in dialogue now on, like I said, over 300 lines for next year. And I'm really pleased to say that on a number of those line entries, train operators are saying, well, actually, we can implement some of them in 2021. We can implement them earlier because they're not disruptive. So it's an iterative task, but we've got to do it with our customers in mind, and that's appropriate that we do that.
Thanks, Nick. We need to close now. I'm getting lots of messages online to sort of say what a splendid and excellent presentation you've given us this morning. I've learned a lot, and I think it's been very helpful for many people. So again, thank you so much, Nick, for taking the time to speak to us. Before you all go, just a little bit of an advert. If you found any of this useful and you may be interested in the IOSH Railway Group, then please go to our microsite on the main IOSH webpage and learn more about us. We're always looking for new members and always trying to recruit to the committee as well. And a final reminder that at 1 o'clock this afternoon, we've got George Bearfield, who's going to be talking about safe and secure digital assets. So see you later. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.